if you're just joining us, Jerry West, basketball icon, passed today, 86 years old. Of course, he was architect of the Lakers dynasty. And joining us right now is former president of basketball operations, Bob Myers, and general manager of the Golden State Warriors. And Bob knows Jerry West extremely well. They worked together starting in 2011. Bob, thank you so much for joining us, man. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Matt. Thanks, Evan. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, obviously it's a sad day because of the passing, but I think it's also a day to celebrate Jerry West. And you were as close to him as anybody when he was here. I mean, just why don't you share some initial thoughts, and then we can maybe get into some specifics.
Yeah, I didn't know him, Matt. I don't know if you did, or I think Evan's younger than both of us, but I don't know him from playing, right? He wasn't my hero growing up. He wasn't my, like a lot of people, maybe a generation in front of me. So I just knew him mostly just kind of as a guy, like a friend, somebody that was really decent and kind to me when I was a young agent that didn't have anything, two legs to stand on. He treated me well. And just a person, every time I talked to him, Matt, and when you got on the phone with Jerry, it was a long conversation. It was not short. But I learned something. And when I tell people that, they kind of, I'm not sure if they get it or not, but many times you talk to somebody on the phone, whether it's 15, 20 minutes, you hang up and you go, that was interesting, but nothing really happened. Every time I got on the phone with Jerry or interact with him, I'd walk away with at least one thing that was pretty profound about basketball, about life. And, having been around some people that are, I don't know what he's wanted, celebrity famous in my life, a lot of times they're not the best people, unfortunately. But he was better as a person than I think as a player. He just was so fair. If you and I were talking, or I and Evan were speaking, he would treat you both as well as he would me or anybody else. And I always love that, because I think that's lost sometimes when you a lot of people that have the power that he had would potentially not abuse it, but just just not be a good guy. Be like, I don't know who you are, I don't need to talk to you. And he never was that way. And so I always appreciated the kindness as a person, and how much I learned from him.
Well, Bob, you are correct. I'm a tad bit younger, so I also did not have a chance to watch him as a player. But I'm curious, because a lot of people who did watch him play that have called in or texted in, they keep describing how competitive he was. And I'm just curious if there was a story or an experience in which you saw that competitive fire emit, because I've heard that and have read about just how fiery he was, not just, of course, as a player, but also sometimes as an executive.
He was almost to his own detriment, Evan. I mean, the only people, I knew one of these guys, but I don't really know Michael Jordan. I met him, but can't say I know him. I have an idea of who he is, but just like all of us. But I did know Kobe, and I did know Jerry. And the three people in basketball that I think had this competitiveness that transcended what we call competitive, they deserve their own category. I think those three people, because they had a level of competitiveness that I'm not sure I've come across before. And there's a burden that comes with that, because that's not normal. Most people lose at Monopoly, Evan, or pickup. They don't really care, to be honest. They lose it. You go play pickup basketball, guys, like, whatever. I lost, no big deal.
Yeah.
These guys are not built like that. And they could never turn it off. And so what comes with that is oftentimes, if you're talented, a tremendous amount of success. If you are that competitive and talented and have that kind of drive and desire, you will win and succeed, just because that combination is rare. There's many talented people that don't have that and do fine, but you combine ultra competitiveness with talent, and there's a specialness to that as far as sports goes. But he would watch the games, and it was so, I couldn't watch with him at the end, because we all I would tell Kirk Lacob, you got to sit next to Jerry. I can't do it, because I was a young GM. I was kind of, I didn't know if I was getting fired or what was going on, and we're in these playoff games, And Jerry, there was, he lived in the world where he wanted perfection, and nobody's perfect. And he wanted people to live at the standards or play at the standard he did. And that's probably the same way Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant would observe a game or watch a teammate or opponent. But we all can't perform like that. I certainly I'd watch an NBA player and go, well, yeah, he screwed up. But I mean, the guy's 1,000 times better than I could ever be. Whereas Jerry would watch a player and go, yeah, I was much better than that guy, and he screwed up. And so it was hard for me to watch with him because I was already emotional in my own way, like you guys would be if you were a GM. And then to add that layer, but I always admired the passion. I always admired the care factor, because you can live with somebody that cares too much, but I don't like people that don't care enough. And if caring too much is a problem, well, sure, Jerry cared too much, but I'll go with those guys all day long. Put me around people that care too much in life, that's fine. And those are the people that you really miss when they go.
Bob Myers joining us on 95.7 The Game, former president of basketball operations and general manager for the Warriors. Some people might know that before Bob became those things for the Warriors, he was an NBA agent. Did you ever have to deal with Jerry?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so how was he? How was he when you were an agent dealing with him as a general manager?
I made a mistake one time. What I learned with Jerry, Matt, was you do not call him after a loss. And I knew Jerry more when he was with Memphis, because when he was with the Lakers, I had just started the business. And I remember I ran into him at, I think, Vincente Foods, which is this restaurant supermarket in LA. And it was right before he left the Lakers. And I think they might have either just won the championship with Phil Jackson, or he was kind of a mythical figure, but I knew him, and I ran into the supermarket. He was checking out. I said, congratulations. And he said something like, yeah, I'm done. And I was kind of like, what? And then he left. He left the Lakers. And I think it was like he just, I don't know, needed a pause. And we talked about that at times, like why he did that. But I learned at one point, I think Mike Miller was a player for the Memphis Grizzlies, and we were trying to get Jerry and the Grizzlies to promote Mike for Sixth Man of the Year. And I absentmindedly decided to call Jerry the day after they lost. And I said, hey, Jerry, we're just trying to, if the organization could maybe, mention I think Hubie Brown might have been, I don't know who was the coach, Vitello. Hey, could they put in a good word for Mike? And Jerry just lit me up. What are you talking about? No, we just lost the game. And I just looked, I was like, what an idiot am I for bringing this up now? Because he was so competitive, but I'll tell you what, he treated me so well. As a young agent, I was flying to Memphis because we had a few guys on their team, Pau Gasol and Mike Miller and Earl Watson. And I remember him telling me, he asked me what time I was getting in to the airport. And I was flying from LA to Memphis. And I said, I don't know, Jerry, like 2:30. And he said, where are you staying? And I said, I think I'm at the Wyndham, or I forget what it was. And he said, why don't you stay at my house? And I said, and I'll pick you up. And I said, and I think to myself, people say that stuff. Nobody picks anybody up from the airport anymore. I don't know. Maybe you guys do, but it's a rare breed now. So, and again, this is Jerry West. So I go, you don't have to do that. And he says, no, I'll pick you up. Jerry West picks me up. I am a nobody, like a zero. I'm not even important. And he picks me up from the airport, and I stay at his house, and treats me like a family member. And I'll never forget that. About Jerry, the kindness when no one was looking, just the decency that he was to me. And again, I miss him for who he was as a person. I don't have these memories of watching Mr. Clutch, but I'm thankful. I spent so much time with him. I'm just super grateful for knowing the man. I'm fortunate.
Well, and for a lot of Warriors fans, your introduction is essentially the same time as his. I'm curious, though, Bob, when it came to the draft or identifying players, because that's something that Jerry West is also, I mean, it was synonymous with a lot of things in the NBA, but that's also a big part of it, too, him being able to identify future talent, future greatness. What was it like to speak to him about a player like Klay Thompson or Draymond Green or any one of these members that we now know and love, but he saw before anybody else did? Could you take us behind the scenes in regards to that?
Oh, yeah. He was always, he loved talking about players that played in the league. He loved the draft. He'd been part of the league so long. You know, we would do a lot of that as far as I like this guy and I like that guy. He was very quick. I remember when I was an agent, I had a player working out for him and he would let me watch the workout, which is rare. A lot of times when you're an agent, they don't let you watch your draft workout in the facility. Jerry said, you can come watch. And he was the Lakers GM then. And I remember it was a certain player, I forget what it was. And they ran up and down and about 10 minutes into the workout, Jerry goes, all right, that's enough. And I was kind of thinking, what do you mean? Did the guy screw up? He goes, no, he can play. He's good. It's enough. I'm not going to kill these guys. And so he had a very great eye. He had an unbelievable eye. And if you talk to him about the Kobe Bryant workout, which I didn't see, he knew on Kobe Bryant. And to draft him the way he did, and Kobe Bryant was the 13th pick, I think.
Yeah.
People act like Kobe Bryant was the number one pick and everybody knew he'd be great. Jerry West knew he'd be great. And Jerry West maneuvered that with Arn Tellem to change the fortunes of the Lakers for 20 years. You know, with the Warriors, the things I remember most, he did love Klay Thompson. He loved early. He knew Michael, and he saw the shot with Klay, and he just saw the uniqueness of that. And that was memorable. But for me, more importantly, and certainly identifying players is a big part of it, but I gained a lot from his giving me courage in certain situations. As far as a young GM learning and feeling the pressure and him just saying, don't ever operate out of fear. There was not a fear in how he played and how he lived and how he made decisions. He never looked back. He had a strong conviction. He could handle mistakes. He beat himself. He was his hardest critic. So the media or the public could never move him because he punished himself so much. And so when I would speak to him, a lot of times it was about managing coaches. It was about how to react to managing star players. He managed, obviously, Shaq and Kobe, Magic Johnson, Kareem. We had, at that time, our players were becoming these figures, right? These kind of generational people in the Warriors organization. So he was very helpful for me as far as how do you move through all this stuff when a player becomes such a big icon amongst his teammates. And so I remember more of those things. And I'm not saying the other stuff didn't happen, but my memories of him was like as a mentor in some ways as to how to live as a GM or how to operate as a GM in general.
Bob Myers joining us on 95.7 The Game, former president of basketball operations and general manager of the Golden State Warriors. Jerry West, basketball icon, passed today at 86 years old. Jerry West, of course, during his storied career, had a stop with the Golden State Warriors and had a big role along with Bob in the dynasty. I got to ask you this. Part of NBA and Warriors lore is that if you guys traded Klay Thompson for Kevin Love, that Jerry was going to walk. True or not?
I don't think it. I mean, that is like this mythical story, and I always tell people the idea that was as close as people thought wasn't. There was nothing going on in the NBA. That story dragged, and I always tell people we never got as far as people think, and they don't believe me or whatever. And I say, had that deal been close, we would have requested, Kevin Love's medical because he had some medical stuff going on. And we never did. Sure, our job was to look at it. But Jerry, it never got to the point where we want to do it. And Jerry said, if we do it, I'm out of here. It never got to that level. But it's a fun story for people to tell. And people remember it in such a way. But he certainly, and Steve, we all love Klay. I mean, and people want to say that had Jerry not stepped in, that wasn't, Joe loved Klay. I loved, Steve, everybody. But, he was a big fan, and that kind of took on a life of its own. But no, that one, I don't know if I can ever talk that one down. But
it's fair to say that he didn't want to do that.
No, he didn't want to do it. Yeah. No, he did not want to do it. But to the point of like everybody else did, that part isn't true. But he definitely didn't want it. Definitely didn't want it. So,
well, while we're on the subject of myths or, tales of a mythical figure in Jerry West, Bob, how influential was he in the Kevin Durant courting in 2016?
Yeah, I mean, he knew. Jerry was out. Jerry could pick up the phone and talk to anybody in the NBA. Everybody respected Jerry. Anybody you throw a dart at the wall and it lands on a coach, a GM, an owner, a player, a commissioner. Everybody is taking his call. And so where Jerry was good in that process is after we left the meeting in the Hamptons, he just wanted to talk to Kevin. And Rich Kleiman helped make it happen. This was like early July after the meeting in the Hamptons. And, Kevin, just having Jerry West a part of something just makes it better. And I know people want to put percentages on, well, Kevin Durant came because of this or that or Curry, right? I mean, truth is probably more Curry than anything. But Jerry was certainly additive in the whole process because, to my point about Jerry, when Jerry West calls you and says, hey, I think this would be great for you, people listen to that, and people respect that. And so whether it's even you guys, if you guys called Jerry West for advice and said, hey, should I stay here? I do this, you would remember what he told you because he's Jerry West.
Right.
And so he was good in that respect, and he talked to Kevin. And the best part is, you see the people coming out and commenting on Jerry. And what's really sad? What's really sad about today is I would have loved to have heard what Kobe would have said about Jerry today. Because they were close. Those two guys were close. And he was there at the start for Kobe. And they had a closeness and a trust. Kobe trusted Jerry when Kobe first got to LA as a young kid that didn't know anybody. And you walk into LA, 18, 19, that city is a monster. I mean, that city can just swallow people. And for Kobe to have Jerry in his corner and just to kind of protect him and guide him through it, I would have loved to have heard what Kobe would have said. And I know he said stuff about Jerry before he passed and how much he revered him, but I think he would have expanded on it in a pretty big way if he was here.
Bob Myers joining us on 95.7 The Game. Jerry West, basketball icon, passed today at 86 years old. And, of course, he worked alongside Bob Myers with the Warriors, helping them create a dynasty here. Bob, I know you're probably got a lot going on today, so let me finish up with this one. The one thing about Jerry West is I think he's considered the most knowledgeable basketball person that in the game. And I'm just wondering, it would be very gutsy to disagree with him on something, yet I'm sure there must have been disagreements. And I'm wondering, for a guy who was respected that much and knew as much as he did, how did he handle somebody who disagreed with one of his opinions about basketball?
It helped that when Joe was considering bringing Jerry on board, I had just come along, Matt. And so I remember he mentioned, what do you think of Jerry? And I said, I love Jerry. I said, I can work with Jerry. And by the way, I don't know that Joe really cared what I thought. He was probably going to do it anyway. But I said, it wasn't like I had a place in that. But I said, I can work. I know Jerry. And he was like, really? And I said, yeah, I mean, I know, I've known him for 15 years. I met him 15 years ago. So yeah, he'd be fantastic. And only, Matt, because I knew him, did I feel comfortable maybe not agreeing with everything he said, but it was never contentious. Jerry would be strong, and then he might listen, and he might come back the next day, and he was never disrespectful. He was strong in his opinions, but we didn't agree on every single thing. Even forget about like drafting this guy or signing it. But I just think it helped that I knew him before I took the job. If I didn't know him before, I would have been distressed. I would have just been overwhelmed.
Right.
I mean, picture of one of you guys, you're a GM of the Warriors at 35, you got Jerry West looking over your shoulder. It's like, come on.
True.
Like, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. I mean, but since I knew him and had some equity in the relationship, we could talk respectfully. It's still, he's Jerry West. So it wasn't like, you just tell, I never told him what to do, but to that point, it helped that I had known him before, and it made the conversation easier, whether they were agreeing or disagreeing on anything.
Right.
So.
Hey, Bob, thank you so much for lending your time. Really appreciate it. Some unbelievable insight to Jerry. Can't thank you enough.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, guys. Take care.
Right. That was Bob Myers, former president and general manager of the Golden State Warriors. Of course, he worked side by side with Jerry West starting in 2011, and they built a dynasty.